Guests arriving at this year's Stallion Day at Summerhill could have been forgiven for thinking that they'd happened on a winter gathering of the clans in the Highlands of Scotland. Only the Zulu parking attendants gave the game away. The event will surely go down as one of the coldest on record since it was first started, in a very modest way, some 3 decades ago. But Linda Norval and her organising team were well prepared for the worst that the weather could throw at them, with a canvas marquee and attendant comforts which would have done any military rescue mission proud. Most people dressed to ward off the chill, but there were the bold and the beautiful amongst them. Dr. Alan Miller was there, representing Team Valour, which raced resident stallion Visionaire. The Sporting Post's Robin Lowe with her photographer husband Hamish Niven. The cold couldn't put a damper on most people's enjoyment of the occasion. And this young man certainly wasn't going to don a beanie to hide his trendy hairstyle. There was plenty of time before the start of the Stallion Show to catch up on a bit of the local gossip. Kevin Summerhill of Drakenstein Stud and Barley Ward Thomas of Darley's Australian operation are old friends who had some catching up of their own to do. Mine host, Mick Goss, wasn't in the least deterred by the gloomy weather, greeting guests like the Hong Kong Jockey Club's Andrew Harding and his family in his usual effusive manner. Proceedings had to be put on hold for a few minutes while the assembly awaited the delayed arrival of His Majesty King Letsie III of Lesotho and Queen Masenate. But the King's towering figure, a familiar sight at Stallion Day, soon appeared on the walkway, and the presentation began shortly thereafter with a surprise addition, or better said, a twist to the usual order of events.
Those of you who are sitting down, you're all right. If you're sitting in the seats, though, can I suggest that you tighten your seat belts? We have representatives here of more than 20 countries, from Japan, from Hong Kong, from Singapore, from of all places Chechnya, from India, from Australia. This place resembles, there's so many Aussies here today, it resembles the AGM of the Australian breeders. New Zealand, the Arab Emirates, Dubai, Qatar, England, Ireland, Germany and France. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, the United States are with us. In the African continent, we've got the Kenyans with us, we've got Zimbabweans, we've got His Majesty and Her Majesty, King Letsie and Queen Masenate of Lesotho. And we have our other foreign neighbours from Cape Town. You're all very, very welcome indeed.
For the foreign visitors in particular, Mick Goss's potted history lesson about the area surrounding Summerhill and the farm's proximity to some of the events which shaped world history is always fascinating.
On this farm, the most brilliant general of that war, Louis Botha, the first Prime Minister of the Union of South Africa, took command of the Boer forces from the hero of the First Anglo-Boer War, Piet Joubert. In the house, Hartford House, where many of you are staying tonight, that was the home of the family of the last Prime Minister of the colony, Sir Frederick Moore. Winston Churchill, the greatest Englishman of that era, was captured just 40 minutes to the northeast of us here by the Boers. And those self-same Boers were responsible for capturing the greatest African of all time, maybe the greatest man the world's ever known, 20 minutes to the southeast of us here in 1961. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these Boers, they beat the British in the Second Anglo-Boer War in the greatest ambush the British Army ever walked into at Colenso. They went on to beat them again at Falklands. And then at the mother and the father of them all, don't worry about what the Afrikaner historians tell you about Marcusfontein and Modderdrift. He saw us waar die boere die koffie gemaakt het. Spionkop. Spionkop. The bodies lay 3 deep in the trenches, both sides. And on that kopie that day, drawn together by dint of the peculiar circumstances of where we find ourselves today, was Deneys Reitz, the man who gave us the trilogy, a Deputy Prime Minister of South Africa and a Field Marshal in the self-same British forces he'd been fighting in the First World War. He was there. Louis Botha, our first Prime Minister of the Union, and the man who played such a crucial role in reminding the world that if they imposed too much of a sanction on the Germans at the Treaty of Versailles, we'd be at war again in 20 years. He was there. Our man, ladies and gentlemen, the man the world chose to write the charter for the League of Nations and for the United Nations after the respective world wars, the man Winston Churchill appointed to be his successor as the Prime Minister of Britain, if anything should have happened to him in the War Cabinet, Jan Smuts, he was on that kopie that day. Winston Churchill, ladies and gentlemen, the man, probably the most famous Englishman of that century, if not of all time, he was on that kopie that day. And you won't believe this, but our Indian friends will take much joy out of this. The man that liberated India in 1947, Mahatma Gandhi, was carrying a stretcher on Steenkop that day. If you'd called a convention of the United Nations of the world of the most influential people of that century and the next one, you wouldn't have found them more influential than those 5 people who stood on that kopie that day. It's a wonderful piece of history. And today, you're at the home of the champion breeders of South Africa for the last 9 consecutive seasons. That's also historic.
The singing of Nkosi Sikelele is always a stirring moment. It preceded the entrance of the first of the stallions, all of whom had been primped and preened to perfection, though their shiny coats were dulled by the dark grey skies. The first stallion into the arena was the South African bred but Singapore raced Ato, a powerfully made son of Royal Academy, who was making his first appearance at a Summerhill Stallion Day.
Royal Academy, ladies and gentlemen, went on to become the champion sprinter of Europe as well as the world champion miler. Now, Royal Academy, ladies and gentlemen, went on to a glittering career at stud. He got 170 stakes winners and 27 Group 1 winners. But he only got one, like himself, who won Group 1s at 1,200 metres and at 1,600 metres. And it's my great pride and pleasure today to introduce to you that very horse, the only son of Royal Academy to win a Group 1 at 12 and 1,600 metres, Ato. John Slade described him as the finest looking yearling he ever took to a sale. This horse won 9 races, 4 of them at group level, 2 at Group 1 level, 13 group performances. The tribe, the Najinsky tribe, is celebrated in this country not only by this horse and of course by the name of Black Caviar, but by our champion sire of last year, Silvano, and our former champion sire, Dancing Champ. It's alive and well, the sire line in this country, and we're delighted to have a horse of this extraordinary caliber with us today.
Golden Sword, a son of Epsom Derby winner High Chaparral, is one of the most accomplished racehorses ever to be imported to South Africa, having himself finished second to the phenomenal See the Stars in the world's most prestigious horse race.
It might be pretentious to talk about any horse in the same breath as Savage Wells, but it's a fact, ladies and gentlemen, that the only stallion since Savage Wells to get 6 Group 1 winners from his first year at stud is our man High Chaparral. Last year in Australia, he got a Triple Crown winner in Sydney in It's a Done Deal, and if you were watching Royal Ascot last week, you would have seen the world champion miler Tornado, all sons of High Chaparral. And here in front of you today, you have the second highest rated son of High Chaparral ever to race in the Northern Hemisphere. He was a juvenile winner over 1,400 meters. He ran within 2.5 lengths of the best 3-year-old in the world of his year, See the Stars, in the greatest race in England. He ran the fastest 2,000 meters in UAE history. He still holds the record at Maidan. And let me tell you, to put that into context, 19 World Cup winners preceded him. Our man Khotso, who is a student at the school this year, and Samson Sibanda are accompanying him. Yeah, well, my dad.
A selection of Golden Sword's weanlings was paraded in front of an admiring audience, with former champion Pierre Jourdain displaying his superb temperament as the leader of the pack. Await the Dawn was also campaigned by Mike de Kock in Dubai after a career in Ireland and the UK, which saw him win 4 in a row, including the Group 2 Hardwick Stakes, before he was beset by a life-threatening illness.
A Giant's Causeway, ladies and gentlemen, is the emerging sire of sires around the world. He already has 5 sons with the distinction of having produced Group 1 winners around the world, and he's another one on the way. You're about to look at his best racing son in the world in 2012, our man Await the Dawn. He won 6 races in the best company, most times at odds on, every time, ladies and gentlemen, easing down. He was a group winner, can you believe it, by 9 lengths on his group debut. He then went to England, to the Huxley, to take his revenge on the British, and he waltzed in by 4.5 in a star-studded field. And then to Royal Ascot, ladies and gentlemen, where he met 4 Group 1 winners in a time-honoured event where the previous year the winner was a horse called Harbinger, who was bar none the best racehorse in the world of that year. To put that into context, he came out of that race winning by 3.5, easing down again, and the greatest rating agency in the world, Timeform, allocated him a 126 plus, which puts him slightly ahead of Silvano, champion sire in South Africa, Exceed Excel, the champion sire of Australia, and of course Teofilio, the leading first season sire in Europe, with 5 Group 1 winners in his first 3 crops. That will put this racehorse into context. It is a rating well ahead of the likes of Pulpit, Dan Silly, Distorted Humour, all champion sires of America and Ireland, Alpine and Europe. And it's well ahead of our own people, Fort Wood and Dynasty. We're looking at a proper racehorse. What else, ladies and gentlemen, could any woman want? He got to late last year, so you didn't see him, but he served a wonderful book of 92 mares. He only served for 2.5 months, and he got 87 of them in foal.
Brave Tin Soldier was bought as a yearling in the USA for a record $30 million. His pedigree says it all.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, if stud fees are anything to go by in the world, the most sought-after stallion in the world was a horse called Storm Cat, who stood for 500,000 or 5.5 million rands per jump. Pay your money, no guarantees. But this stallion in front of you, Brave Tin Soldier, is by that most sought-after stallion in the world, out of a daughter of the greatest broodmare sire in American history, Mr. Prospector. She was a sister to the Kentucky Derby hero, Kusachi Pegasus, out of a daughter of the world champion sire, Danzig, out of yet another champion American sire, Halo. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in human terms, we call that royalty. In equine terms, it's like being a son of King Letsie out of Queen Masenate. And I know they'll forgive me the analogy, because only last weekend, His Majesty's colt by Brave Tin Soldier, Semple King, ran a sparkling race for Michael Roberts in the 200,000 Rand Breeders' Juvenile Plate. He was a record-priced foal in the world. He still holds the world record, $3 million United States dollars. At yesterday's exchange rate, 33 million rands he cost at 5 weeks of age, still at his mother's side. He was a stakes-winning juvenile. As a maiden, he took on the best juveniles in Ireland, and he beat them in the race that launched the careers of Sadler's Wells and Galileo Norhull. He was a record-breaking, group-winning miler as an older horse, plagued by all sorts of problems, I might add, but when you see his run in the cliffhanger just now, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And ladies and gentlemen, we are looking right now at the #1 freshman sire in South Africa by a country mile by percentage winners to runners. Thank you.
The imposing Mullins Bay, who's become an old pro at Stallion Day, even to the extent of performing a trick or two on cue, is a well-performed son of the great Machiavellian. He's already proved himself as a sire, having been the #1 second-crop stallion, measured by average earnings per runner.
This season he's had 5 feature race performers, including the million-mile hero Gitiano, and he's just produced the first and the only triple tiara heroine in Zimbabwe history, Casey's Dance. John Matong, we'll see how leading him around today. We'll talk about him just now. Our man John has just graduated from the English National Studies, the top student of the year, ladies and gentlemen. That deserves a hand. The most important thing about our man Solskjaer as he stands here today, he is ranked, as he stands here today, in the top 5 stallions in South Africa by earnings per runner this season. He has the distinction of being represented, as we stand here today, by no fewer than 3 individual millionaires at the races today. ISAS, horse of the year in Mauritius last year. Our man Shogana, who was on show yesterday, and Winter Star. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're wanting to breed a millionaire for little money, the man is in front of you. Thank you. Temba Zuma has led him around. He's been in our stallion barn for more than 2 decades.
Traffic Guard is by More Than Ready, currently the world's most successful dual hemisphere stallion, and he's the highest rated Northern Hemisphere bred son of More Than Ready to date.
He was undefeated at 2 over 1,200 metres. He went on to 2 record-breaking performances at a mile, and what's more, ladies and gentlemen, he took his class to the distance of the July, and very nearly soiled the reputation of the world champion 3-year-old of his year, new approach in the Irish Champion Stakes. He brings to the forefront here the highest of athletic virtues, wonderful physical appeal, and a damn good-looking crop of first foals. Richard Tongwan, a graduate of our School of Management Excellence, and Lucas KwaZulu-Natal of the Glen Cotson Yard. Glenn, welcome today.
The Japanese-bred Admire Main, a son of Sunday Silence, won his first 4 races by a total of 22 lengths, including a listed race at 7 furlongs, a Group 2 and a Group 3. He also ran second in the Japanese Derby, beaten a neck.
He already has 3 stakes-winning youngsters in Japan. In his first crop in South Africa, ladies and gentlemen, he has a Group 1 performing daughter in Admiral's Eye, who was an admirable winner last weekend of the 200,000 Rand fillies mile at Clarewood. Those that read the statistics, ladies and gentlemen, have obviously caught on, and they paid 400,000 and 500,000 Rands for his progeny at last year's Ready to Run, including Hayaku, who for Brian Riley and Sean Terry put up a magnificent debut in that very British juvenile plate last Sunday. Emil Fredericks from Himmel and Ada and Swanelo Zumwa, who was a graduate of the school last year, have accompanied the horse. Siamo.
AP Arrow, a winner of 5 races in the USA and the UAE, is a son of AP Indy, sire of numerous top American stallions.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're talking about sires of sires in the American context right now, AP Indy has to be the emperor. He's the sire of Bernardini, Malibu Moon, Pulpit, Congrats, Tappet, and just this season, his grandson, Lucky Pulpit, produced the winner of America's first 2 legs of their Triple Crown. His best racing son in Africa is the man in front of you, AP Arrow. This fellow promptly put up of the order of $1.5 million in stakes. The Sire's Handbook tells us that he's already produced 14% black-type fillies in his first crop of 3-year-olds as they stand at the moment. Not many stallions can say that. He's also, as we know, got a black-type colt who was placed in the SA Derby trial. It's an old truism, ladies and gentlemen, of the APND trial. They get better with age and they get better with distance. And the reality is, they just get better.
Visionaire, who was very successfully campaigned by Barry Irwin's Team Valor in the USA, is a son of Grand Slam and thus part of the illustrious sire-making male line of Gone West, which numbers Western Winter and Sail from Seattle here in South Africa.
The colt who devastated the best 3-year-olds in the United States in the greatest stallion maker in that country today, the King's Bishop Stakes. That day, he carried the colours of Team Valor, and he came home, ladies and gentlemen, in 1 minute 21 for the 7 furlongs. It's unheard of. He left America in a hurry to get on the plane to come to South Africa. He left only 22 foals behind. 13 of them have run. 9 of them have already won, ladies and gentlemen. South Africans paid their respects this year at the National Yearling Sales when they sent him home with an average that was 17 times his opening stud fee, including a filly, for 1.4 million rands. You're looking at 350 years of thoroughbred perfection. At Summerhill, we say when you see something like this, you just have to grab the keys and run. The kneel from General Order and final coming of the company.
Always a highlight of Stallion Day, especially for overseas visitors, is the spectacular Zulu dancing display by Summerhill's international award-winning troupe. As the years have passed, dancers who were once slender, lithe young men have grown into powerful warriors who would have graced the impies of King Shaka almost 2 centuries ago. Another tradition of the event is the sabrage demonstration by Takwon van Arnhem, with the assistance of Queen Masinate. After years of practice, the Queen could probably perform this feat unaided, but Mr. van Arnhem obviously has ambitions to raise the stakes in future.
So what the gentleman did on horseback, we're cutting that out as well. Maybe next time, Mick. They used the back of their sabres and they whacked off the head of the champagne bottle, saving a tremendous amount of time.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going inside.
The extremely chilly conditions in which they'd had to strut their stuff made the dancers well deserving of the generosity of the appreciative audience, as the guests filed back into the School of Excellence and sought out liquid fortification. Richmond-based trainer Doug Campbell is a stalwart of Summerhill Stallion Day, as is the irrepressible Michael Roberts. Bloodstock agent Wayne Aldred from Australia chatted to veteran TV personality Martin Locke. Gold circles Jill Simpkins with TV presenter Wesley Bowman and partner. Still on cloud 9 after their Vodacom Durban July victory with Legislate the previous day were Dennis and Gail Evans chatting to Michael Roberts.
The old house is still standing, though the paint is cracked and dry. And there's that old oak tree that I used to play on
Behind the scenes, with the guests already tucking into the soup starter, Chef Jackie Cameron, who's shortly to leave Hertford House to set up her own cooking school, calmly oversaw last-minute preparations for the serving of the main course, delicious Parmesan cheese-topped Italian meatballs.
What it would normally be, it's obviously Hertford, the restaurant. We do an a la carte breakfast, lunch and dinner. We have the 15 rooms, so it's normally about 30 or 40 people. But then we'll be doing things like a 5-course dinner menu. So it's a lot more intricate than the kind of food that we did today. But I think what I've prided myself in over the years is consistency and ensuring, like I was just saying earlier when the cameras were in the kitchen, I was counting that there was 9 mince balls on every single plate, and we did 450 plates. This event it's just really a showcasing of how one brand, one team can come together and make something really special, because we have people waitering tables that are working with the horses, that are working on the farm. You know, it's not just people in the hospitality industry, and it's really all of us just getting into it and getting it done. And I think what's special and very special about Summerhill is that it is a team, that we all do work together. And we must also remember most of the staff live on the farm. So after work, we all go home and we also live together and we also play together. So there's a real kind of understanding and appreciation for each person and how well they've done and how they've grown. Only 200 on that side, okay? And 200 on this side to start. Some of my staff, they came in not knowing what a cucumber is, not knowing what a salt and pepper grinder. Most of my staff had maybe like standard 5, standard 6 education, and these are ladies that, and I really do mean this, what gets me out of bed every single morning. You know, the awards are fantastic that we get, but coming into work every day and seeing that upliftment and development in another human being is what really makes every day so special for me. The years that I've been here, I think I've been overseas about 25 times to cook for different events, and I've been lucky enough to take some of my Zulu ladies with me. And you must remember, some of these ladies haven't been further than Durban, let alone Johannesburg, let alone, for instance, to Prague, Switzerland, Shanghai, complete. And I think every single time I have gone overseas, I've learned more from the experience than I think even they did, because you kind of relive traveling through their eyes, and it's a very unique experience.
Zandi Lemtunu, you saw all those Zoomers leading stallions this afternoon. She's a member of the same family, and her uncle was the one-time head of that stallion barn, Mindla Zoom. She's cooked for South Africa in Shanghai. We've got Zintle Majola with us today, this young girl here. Her father was 78 years old when we took over at Hertford 20 years ago. He was a rider of Mowgli. We have a man in our midst this afternoon who is an apprentice, used to ride the Mighty Sentinel, Michael Roberts, who went on to become the first South African to be glorified as a champion jockey in Britain. This young lady, who's a rising star in our kitchen, is a 4th generation member of the farm staff. And this one here will admit that that one there, without her, there wouldn't have been a top 10 of any sort. And there's the new star in the firmament, Travis Finch, who joined us over a year ago and will carry the mantle forward. You wouldn't have known if Jackie wasn't in this kitchen. She'll be the first to tell you that, because she's been on television or on overseas trips for just about 4 of the last 3 years.
I don't have a microphone.
Special awards are always presented on Stallion Day to benefactors of the stud and its various initiatives.
Hertford House, Keith and Pauline Young. Deputy Chairman. Dr. Alan Miller is here today to represent Team Valor. He was the man behind the fact that they endow the school every year with a scholarship. And it's for the leading female student of the year, Alan Miller. We're going to ask Mrs. Bridget Khadebe to come up. The first recipient of this particular award is a man who's put up his hand religiously every year here, a major shareholder, wisdom enough to be involved in Awake the Dawn, Lee Strabant. Ladies and gentlemen, another couple who never ever fail to put their hands up at this sale. A couple who've started a young stud enterprise in this part of the district. I have to say that Sid Rousseau's wife Shirley is the most nervous woman I've ever come across at a horse sale. She didn't believe they'd get 5 bob for their horses at the national sales and came away top vendors in Natal by average. They are here to receive their award from Bridget Khalebe and from the King of the Shoot.
Among the special guests who were introduced to the audience were the Hong Kong Jockey Club's Andrew Harding, one of the driving forces behind the Asian Racing Conference. Ireland's Margaret Nolan, who was to present a fascinating paper on blue light therapy for the optimizing of gestation in mares at the winter school, staged over the following 2 days. Vodacom Durban July winning co-owners Dennis and Gail Evans. Darley Studs Barley Ward Thomas. And Pumalela CEO Rian Duplessis. Summerhill's School of Excellence, headed up by Heather Morkel, continues to play a vital role in training aspirant horsemen and women from all around South Africa, and now even abroad, in various aspects of stud and agricultural management. Mick Goss paid a special tribute to the role of Heather Morkel in this endeavour.
She became my PA. She eventually headed up our personnel division here. And then she told me the bad news that her husband was being transferred to Joburg, so we opened an office in Joburg because she'd become that familiar with what we did. She became the first CEO of the Trade Council. And then we brought her home when her husband was transferred back to Pietermaritzburg. I said, you've got to come and teach kids. And so she started the school. And that's what's happened. And I've got to say that the inspiration behind a hell of a lot of what these kids have achieved has been through Heather.
Well, I came to Summerhill last year especially to visit the school. I've heard about the school.
We took a moment to chat to Camille Mervan, the first international student on the course, whose father, Patrick Mervan, is a leading trainer on the island of Mauritius.
In Mauritius, we don't have this knowledge about breeding. And to come on the stud farm to make a course about racing, a bit of racing and a lot about breeding, will really help me to know more about international racings and to help me to train in Mauritius to be one of the best.
So you'll have to raise your hands on high. We do have pit spotters all over the place.
The auction of stallion services in aid of the School of Excellence always forms a prominent part of the proceedings. And Graham Hawkins, as per tradition, was on hand to cajole guests into digging deep into their pockets.
And 11 is all again going on. 11 is all on 11,000. Selling one side, third last time going at 20,000 and sold.
Superb, the food is outstanding. That was Christine.
The curtain came down on the proceedings with the serving of tea and coffee with friandises before everyone sought the comfort of hearth and home.